Hello, Max of CryptoZilla again. Today I will focus on the upcoming Polkadot Governance v2. I'll be using information from this blog post written by Gavin Wood himself. I will explain how the governance will change and what novel features in the referendum process will be introduced with this new version of governance. Polkadot's and Kusama's current governance system is based on parliamentary democracy and it has been functioning this way for around 2 to 3 years. However, the current governance also has its drawbacks. That's why the next generation of governance within the Polkadot ecosystem is being introduced and will replace the original governance soon, first on Kusama and then also on Polkadot. So Polkadot's next generation governance system is for now known as Governance 2. It aims to solve the issues with the current governance system, such as centralized and not anonymous council, also greatly centralized technical committee, and also the fact that there can only be one referendum voted at a time and these votes last multiple weeks. Also, the current governance has a degree of exclusivity built in, reduced inclusivity and diversity, which hurts the overall referendum's turnout and legitimacy. So Governance 2 is aiming at least partially fix all these issues. First, what Governance 2 doesn't change. What will remain the same is that 50% of the total stake in the system should be able to ultimately command the network's future. Also, new governance doesn't remove the conviction voting, giving greater weight to those who are willing to lock their tokens in the system for a longer time. Now, where Governance 2 differs the most is how it manages day-to-day decision-making, making referenda better scoped and agile, in order to greatly increase the number of collective decisions that the network can take. Governance 2 should be a lot simpler in many ways than the current governance. There will be no additional bodies which acted as first-class citizens in the governance, such as the council and technical committee. Also, there is no alternating timetable of proposals. There will be only one first-class decision-making mechanism, the referendum. The main difference in Governance 2 is that there will be lots of them, perhaps even thousands referendums, all happening at the same time. In Governance 2, anyone will be able to start a new referendum at any time, as many times as they wish, and anyone can vote on these referenda. So since there will probably be many more referendums to vote on compared to the current model, some novel features will be introduced to the referendum process with Governance 2 to make participating in governance easier. First, this kicking off phase. When a referendum is initially created, it's immediately votable by anyone in the community. However, it's not yet in a state where it can end or otherwise have its votes counted and be approved and summarily enacted. Instead, referenda will have to fulfill a number of different criteria before they are moved into a state known as deciding. Until the referenda are moved into this state, they still remain undecided. Those criteria which will need to be met are three. First, all referenda have so-called lead-in period. This is an amount of time which must have elapsed after proposal before deciding can even begin. So this is sort of a protection mechanism. This will provide for an initial notice period in which votes can be submitted to mitigate against the possibility of decision snipping. The second condition is that there must be room for the decision. There will be some limits for the number of referenda which can be deciding simultaneously. This is pretty technical, but in a nutshell, only one very important and thus potentially dangerous proposal can be being decided at once, while, for example, tipping proposals, which are not of such a big importance for the whole network, there can be many different tipping proposals being decided at once. And the third thing needed is that a decision deposit must be paid. Creating a referendum will be cheap, with the deposit needing to be paid only relating to the on-chain storage. However, having a referendum be decided upon will carry a greater risk and will use up a limited space. For that reason, a larger, although refundable deposit will have to be paid to prevent spamming and bloating the network. So these were three core conditions that each referendum needs to meet. Now, deciding and confirming a proposal. If all those three conditions are met, a referendum enters the state called deciding. Once a referendum gets into this deciding state, it's eligible to be approved. This eligibility lasts only a limited time. It will be 28 days on Polkadot, at which point, if the referendum is not approved, then it's rejected by default. For the referendum to be approved, it must fulfill two criteria, and it must continue fulfilling these two criteria for a minimum of the confirmation period. Different types of referenda will have different length of this confirmation period. Essentially, more powerful referendums with a greater potential impact for the direction of the whole network will take longer to confirm. Those two passing criteria are related to approval and support. Approval is the share of approval votes after adjustment for conviction against the total number of votes for both approval and rejection of the referendums. You can see the amount of yes and no votes from the total number of votes here. And support is the total number of votes in approval compared to the total possible amounts of votes that could be made in the system. Now, each class of referendum has different requirements for these values of approval and support, so each type of referendum will actually require different approval and support value. Now, what happens after the approval of referendum? But first, proposals which are not approved after that 28 days period are considered rejected by default. The good news is that the decision deposit will be refunded, and the proposals that manage to become and remain passing for the confirmation period during those 28 days will be considered approved and will be scheduled to be executed. Now, shortly about interventions. Interventions mechanism will be used when it becomes clear that a proposal which is already being voted on contains a problem and it is desirable to cancel it. In Governance 2, there is a special operation for intervening in this way known as cancellation. This cancellation will immediately reject an ongoing referendum regardless of its current status. Now, this Agile delegation feature is also pretty interesting. The council in the current Polkadot's governance is basically an entity delegated by other voters to make up for the fact that many of token holders did not want to take part in a day-to-day governance. So the council represents the votes of the majority of token holders. However, since council will be gone in governance 2, that means there will be needed an alternative means of ensuring these passive voters are heard. There was a feature called vote delegation in the original governance system, which will be worked upon and improved in governance 2. Vote delegation means everyone will be able to delegate their voting power to another voter by delegating their tokens. Vote delegation will allow you to lock up your tokens in order to increase the level of voting power your delegate wields on your behalf. Needless to say, those delegated tokens will never leave your control and you will be free to switch delegates or regain direct control back whenever you wish. And the last topic is frequently mentioned, the Fellowship. The Fellowship is described here as a new governance body. This term body slightly confuses me, to be honest, so I tend to think about it as an entity. The Fellowship can be thought of as a logic successor to the Technical Committee. More precisely, it's named the Polkadot Fellowship. It will initially run on the Kusama, since Governance 2 will be first deployed there, and then the Fellowship will be also migrated over to Polkadot with the final Governance 2 deployment. The Fellowship will be self-governing expert body with a primary goal of representing the users who embody and possess the technical knowledge of the Polkadot network and protocol. Unlike the Technical Committee, the Fellowship is designed to be far broader in membership, even tens of thousands of members, and with far lower entry barriers, both in terms of administrative process and expectations of expertise. So becoming a candidate member in the Polkadot Fellowship will be as easy as placing a small deposit. The members will be associated with a rank to designate the degree to which the network expects their opinion to be well informed, and the members of the Fellowship will be able to vote on any given Fellowship proposal, and the aggregate opinion of all members will represent the Fellowship's opinion. Governance 2 will first launch on Kusama. Once tested on Kusama, a proposal will be made to deploy it also on Polkadot. I just checked yesterday the voting and governance mechanism of Kusama, and both the Technical Committee and the Council are still in place, so still some more time until Governance 2 arrives to Kusama. That's been it about Governance 2. Thank you for watching and I'll see you next time.